The millionaire's voice rang out, reckless, proud, half-drunk. "I'll marry the next woman who walks in." And when a weary waitress pushed open the door, time itself seemed to hold its breath.
Hello, if you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and tap the notification bell. Type in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as touching as this one, or maybe even crazier. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's begin.
The bar was too loud, the music too sharp, the laughter too forced. Kael Donovan sat in the corner booth of Brick House Tavern, Atlanta's trendiest post-game spot, his 6'8" frame hunched low, as if shrinking from the spotlight that followed him everywhere. Everyone else was celebrating. His teammates ordered wings and champagne, mixing grease with gold like it was a ritual of victory. Strangers drifted by the booth to slap his shoulder, take a picture, or just say they'd touched the Donovan. He nodded, smiled, and let them think he was in on the fun. Inside, he was miles away. He scrolled through his phone, dozens of unread messages from women he barely knew, brands wanting partnerships, reporters begging for interviews. All noise. None of it touched the hollow pit in his chest. The crowd chanted his name at the arena hours earlier, but he hadn't felt it, not once. "Kael, man," his teammate Jarek shouted over the music, leaning in, "You really gonna sit here all night brooding? You just dropped 42 points. Live a little." Kael smirked, lifting his beer. "This is me living." The table roared, but Kael barely heard them. His gaze drifted toward the door, a flicker of longing flashing across his tired eyes. He wasn't sure what he was waiting for, only that nothing in this room was it. On the other side of town, Amara Fields wiped down the sticky counter of Mel's diner, her body aching from a double shift. The smell of burnt coffee and fried onions clung to her clothes, but tips had been good tonight, and she needed every dollar. She glanced at the clock, just past midnight. Her younger brother Jeremiah was probably still awake, hunched over his homework. She smiled faintly. At least her sacrifices meant he had a chance at a future beyond greasy counters and aching feet. Denise, her manager, popped out of the kitchen with a takeout bag. "Hey, Amara, last one of the night. Delivery to Brick House Tavern. Big order. You mind?" Amara groaned, tying her apron tighter. Of course it's Brick House. Those ball players order like they're feeding a small country. Denise winked. "Think of the tip." Amara sighed, grabbed the bag, and stepped out into the sticky Atlanta night, unaware she was walking straight into a storm. Back at the tavern, the noise swelled, the alcohol hit harder, and Kael, half drunk on restlessness, set his glass down with a heavy clink. "You know what?" His voice cut through the table's chatter. "I'm done with this. All of it. The fakes, the games." Jarek laughed. "Man, don't start your preacher act again." Kael leaned forward, eyes burning, voice low but sharp. "I'll marry the next woman who walks in that door." The table froze, then erupted in laughter, shouts, and toasts. But Kael didn't laugh. For once, he meant it. The door swung open, and Amara Fields walked in holding a delivery bag. Her hair escaping its scarf, shoes worn thin, but her eyes, steady, unflinching, met his across the noisy tavern. Kael's chest tightened. The millionaire had never seen anyone like her. Do you believe Kael's vow was just reckless talk, or could fate really work through moments like this? Drop your take in the comments.
The door to Brick House Tavern swung open with a rush of humid night air, and Amara stepped inside, her arms straining against the weight of the oversized takeout bag. The noise of the bar hit her like a wall. Booming bass, rowdy laughter, the faint haze of cigarette smoke clinging to clothes. She paused, eyes scanning for the manager who'd placed the order. But the pause was long enough. Kael Donovan saw her. The world, at least for him, went quiet. Her clothes weren't glamorous, just the tired uniform of a waitress who'd worked too many hours. Her sneakers were scuffed, apron stained from a day on her feet. Yet her eyes, there was a steadiness in them, a kind of fire that cut through the noise. It rattled him. "Yo, Kael, Jarek nudged him, following his gaze. "That's your bride, huh?" The table exploded with laughter, phones sliding out of pockets to capture the moment. Someone muttered, "Wait till Twitter gets a hold of this." Amara frowned, suddenly aware of dozens of eyes on her. She hugged the delivery bag tighter to her chest, instinctively bracing herself. "Who ordered for Mel's?" she called out, her voice firm, refusing to let nerves show. The bartender pointed toward Kael's table. Amara exhaled sharply and began walking, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Kael's heart pounded. Each step she took toward him was an echo of the words he'd thrown into the air minutes before. "I'll marry the next woman who walks in." And now she stood there. When she reached the table, she set the bag down with a controlled thump. "Delivery from Mel's, $56. Her voice was calm, clipped, professional, but her eyes met Kael's, and she saw something she didn't expect. Vulnerability, loneliness hiding behind a half-smile. Kael stared at her, frozen. For once he had nothing witty to say, no practiced grin. He only managed to low, hoarse, "Hi." The teammates cackled. Jarek pulled out his phone, recording. "Man, you better tip her good. You just promised her the ring." Amara blinked, her jaw tightening. "Excuse me?" The laughter swelled. Strangers from nearby tables leaned in. Cameras flashed. She realized what was happening. She'd walked into someone else's game, and she was the punchline. Her stomach clenched. She'd spent her life working too hard to let anyone laugh at her dignity. "I don't know what joke you're running," she said, her tone like steel, "but I'm not here for it. Pay for your food, and I'll be on my way." The table quieted, her voice cutting through the noise, sharper than the music. Kael reached for his wallet, his movements slow, deliberate, as if he were afraid she might vanish if he blinked. He handed her a $100 bill. "Keep the change." She hesitated, then shook her head and pulled a 20 from her apron. "No, 56. That's 44 back. I don't take pity tips." The teammates howled. "Yo, she just curved the Donovan." But Kael's lips curved into something rare, a genuine smile. Not the polished grin for cameras, but something raw, almost boyish. Respect. The noise of the tavern roared back to life, but between them a charged silence lingered. Amara shoved the change into his hand, turned on her heel, and headed toward the door, shoulders squared, refusing to let the laughter touch her. Kael watched her go, his heart racing, his reckless vow echoing like a dare in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt alive. Outside, Amara stepped into the night air, her pulse hammering. She cursed under her breath, furious at herself for feeling rattled. She'd walked into rooms full of rowdy men before, brushed off crude jokes, swallowed her pride for tips. But tonight, it was different. It was the way he looked at her. Not like she was just a waitress, not like she was invisible, but like she was seen. She shook her head, dismissing the thought. Men like him didn't see women like her. Not really. Still, her hands trembled as she unlocked her car. Back inside, Kael sat back in his booth, ignoring his teammates' jokes. His phone buzzed. Already, social media was ablaze. Donovan's next wife? NBA star vows marriage to Waitress? Mystery woman steals the spotlight. He stared at the door she'd just walked through, the noise around him blurring. For once, he didn't care about the cameras. He only knew one thing. He had to see her again. If you were Amara, would you have taken Kael's money and walked away? Or would you have pushed back like she did? Tell us in the comments.
Amara didn't speak the whole drive home. The radio murmured in the background, but her mind replayed the scene at Brick House Tavern over and over. The laughter, the flashing phones, the tall man with eyes that unsettled her more than the chaos ever could. Kael Donovan. She'd recognized him the second she'd walked in, of course. Everyone in Atlanta knew his face. Posters of him loomed over billboards, commercials ran with his voice selling sneakers, his highlight reels filled sports news. But to her, he was just another man living a life light years away from hers. And yet, that look, that pause, as if for a moment she'd disrupted his world. She gripped the wheel tighter, forcing the thought out of her head. Men like him didn't disrupt for women like her. They played games, they laughed, they moved on. By the time she parked in front of the worn duplex she shared with her family, she had shoved the entire scene into a box in her mind labeled nonsense. Inside, Jeremiah was still awake, textbooks spread across the table. "You're late," he muttered, not looking up. Amara dropped her keys into the chipped bowl by the door. "Last-minute delivery." He glanced up, frowning at her tired face. "You work too much." "And you study too much," she countered softly, ruffling his hair. "That's how we make it out, right?" But her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Across the city, Kael stood in front of his penthouse's glass wall, staring at the Atlantis skyline. The city glittered with neon and possibility, but he only felt the echo of her voice. "I don't take pity tips." Those words hit harder than a defender's elbow. Nobody spoke to him like that. Nobody looked at him like that, like he was just a man, not a millionaire, not a star. His phone buzzed on the counter. Dozens of notifications lit up the screen. ESPN, Donovan's drunken vow goes viral. The Shade Room, NBA star proposes marriage to Waitress. Twitter, hashtag Next Mrs. Donovan trending. Kael swore under his breath. He'd been reckless, sure, but he hadn't expected the world to pounce so quickly. Already his agent's name flashed across the phone. He ignored it. He replayed her face in his mind instead. Tired, yes, but strong, proud, the kind of woman who refused to be swallowed by someone else's game. And for reasons he dared not admit, that pulled at something deep inside him. The next morning, Amara's phone buzzed before she'd even poured her mother's tea. Denise's voice came frantic on the other end. "Amara, you need to get down here, now." "What happened? You haven't seen the news?" Amara frowned, flipping on the small TV perched in the corner. A sports anchor's voice filled the room. "Donovan's shocking statement last night has the internet ablaze. Witnesses claim he vowed to marry the next woman who walked in, and all cameras captured was a waitress from Mel's diner. Who is she? Social media is desperate to know." The screen flashed a grainy image of her standing with the delivery bag, her face caught mid-expression. Amara's blood ran cold. "Denise," she hissed into the phone, "I'm not part of this circus." "You are part of it, whether you like it or not. Paparazzi are already circling the diner." Amara's knees weakened. She had spent her life trying to stay invisible, keep her family safe, work quietly. And now, because of one arrogant man's stunt, strangers around the world knew her name. Kael's phone finally connected with his agent by noon. "You've outdone yourself this time," the man snapped. "Do you know how many calls I've fielded since last night? Sponsors want answers. The press wants interviews. The team is furious. You've made a public spectacle, Donovan." Kael rubbed his temples. "It wasn't supposed to be a spectacle. I was just lonely, drunk. Doesn't matter. What matters is you've dragged some waitress into the spotlight. That girl is everywhere today. Do you realize what this does to her life?" The rebuke hit harder than Kael expected. He imagined her waking up, seeing her face on TV, strangers dissecting her worth. Shame tugged at him, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. "She's tougher than you think," he muttered. His agent scoffed. "That toughness won't protect her from cameras in her bushes. Fix this, Kael, and fast." That afternoon, Amara slipped out the diner's back door, but reporters were waiting anyway. "Amara, how do you feel about Donovan's vow? Did you two meet before last night? Are you really going to marry him?" Flashes blinded her. Panic rose in her throat. She shoved past, clutching her bag, heart pounding. When she finally ducked into her car, she pressed her forehead against the steering wheel and let out a shaky breath. She wanted to disappear, but something told her Kael Donovan wasn't about to let that happen.
By the next morning, Amara's phone was useless. Every time she turned it on, it buzzed non-stop. Unknown numbers, texts from strangers, even a message from a gossip reporter offering money for her side of the story. She shoved it into her drawer and left it there. At Mel's Diner, things weren't better. Customers whispered when she passed their tables. A pair of young women snapped her picture while pretending to look at the menu. Denise hovered at the register, nervous as a cat. "Amara," she whispered, "you can't just keep working like this. Half the people in here aren't even eating. They're just waiting to see you." Amara clenched her jaw. "I didn't ask for this. I just want to do my job." "Then maybe talk to him," Denise urged. "Clear things up before it gets worse." Amara froze. The last thing she wanted was another minute in that man's world. But as she carried plates to a table, she caught sight of Jeremiah outside the window, waving at her on his way home from school. His backpack looked heavier than his shoulders could bear. She needed her job, she needed peace, and if Kael Donovan was the key to both, she'd have to face him. Kael wasn't surprised when his agent stormed into his penthouse unannounced. "We're setting up a meeting today with the girl," the man barked. Kael leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Amara. Whatever her name is, she's a PR nightmare waiting to explode. Do you want to lose sponsorships? The team's already calling it reckless. We need damage control." "And that means dragging her into it?" His agent glared. "She's already in it. You put her there. Now fix it." Kael's stomach twisted. He hated the circus of fame, hated that his words had thrown her under the spotlight she never asked for. Still, when the meeting was arranged at a midtown hotel, he showed up early, restless, adjusting his cap low to hide from cameras. Amara walked into the hotel lobby with her arms crossed, chin lifted high. She wore her plain work clothes, refusing to dress up for this farce. Her mother had warned her not to go. Jeremiah begged her to avoid it, but she knew hiding wasn't an option anymore. Kael rose when he saw her. He had expected her to look smaller somehow, dwarfed by the pressure of media attention. Instead, she strode across the marble floor like she owned it, eyes sharp, shoulders squared. For a moment, he forgot the cameras, the chaos, the PR disaster. He only saw her. "Miss Fields," his agent greeted briskly, "we're here to resolve this situation." Amara cut him off. "I'm not here to play along with anyone's story. I want my life back." Kael swallowed, forcing his voice steady. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It was a stupid thing to say." "Stupid? My face is all over the internet. Reporters are harassing my family, and you call it stupid?" Her anger burned hotter than the flashbulbs outside, and for once, Kael didn't deflect. He let it hit him. "You're right. I messed up. But the only way out is if we do this together." His agent slid a contract across the table. "Temporary arrangement, a few public appearances, smile for the cameras, let the story die down, and then we'll say it ended amicably. Both of you walk away clean." Amara stared at the papers. Every instinct told her to run. She didn't want his money, his fame, his circus. But then she thought of Jeremiah again. Reporters outside their building, neighbors whispering. At least this way, there might be control. Her jaw tightened. "Fine, but don't think for 1 second that this means you owe me anything." Kael nodded, almost relieved. "Fair enough." Their first appearance came that evening, at a charity event Kael had already committed to. Amara wore a borrowed dress from Denise's niece, nothing like the glittering gowns around her, but when she stepped onto the carpet beside Kael,
The crowd went silent. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Kael, is she really the one? Amara, do you believe him? Is this love or a stunt?" Kael felt Amara stiffen beside him, her hand curling into a fist. Without thinking, he slipped his hand into hers, not for the cameras, but to steady her. She shot him a look, sharp and questioning. He only murmured, "Just breathe." For a moment, she did, and though the lights still flashed and the questions still came, the noise dulled just slightly. Kael held on to that moment, fragile as glass.
The charity event ended late, and Amara couldn't escape fast enough. As soon as the cameras stopped flashing, she pulled her hand from Kael's and muttered, "We're done here." Kael didn't argue. He only nodded, following her to the side exit where the night air was cool and quiet compared to the chaos inside. For a long moment they stood there in silence, the city humming faintly around them. Finally, Amara spoke. "You know nothing about me, and I know nothing about you. Yet somehow I'm supposed to stand next to you like it means something." Kael exhaled, leaning against the brick wall. "Then let's change that." She frowned. "Why would I want to? Because whether you like it or not, our names are tied together right now, and I don't want you to carry this weight alone." Amara studied him, surprised at the softness in his tone. Against her better judgment, she asked quietly, "So what's your story, Donovan, other than being rich, famous, and reckless?" Kael's jaw tightened. He looked out at the skyline as if the words would be easier to say if he didn't face her. "My father left when I was 12, he said flatly. "One day he was there, cheering at my games. The next day he was gone. No explanation. Just gone." Amara blinked. She hadn't expected honesty, not from him. "I thought basketball would fill the hole, and it did for a while. Then the money came, the women, the entourage, but the more I had, the emptier I felt. I never knew if anyone wanted me or what I could give them." Silence stretched between them. Amara's throat tightened. She understood abandonment more than she cared to admit. She swallowed hard. "My dad walked out too. He said he was going for cigarettes, never came back. I waited on the porch every day that summer thinking maybe he'd change his mind." Her voice cracked, but she pushed on. "My mom fell apart after that. Bills piled up. I started working at 14, and somehow it's been me holding us together ever since. Men? They've only ever proven I can't count on them." Kael turned then, his gaze steady. "So that's why you didn't take the tip." She met his eyes. "I don't want handouts. Not from you, not from anyone." Something shifted between them. Subtle, but undeniable. For the first time, they weren't opponents caught in a spectacle. They were two broken people, carrying scars that almost mirrored each other. Kael's voice dropped low. "Maybe that's why you're the first person in years who feels real." Amara's chest tightened. She wanted to scoff, to push him away with words sharp enough to keep her safe, but instead she stayed quiet, the truth of her own loneliness pressing against her ribs. The silence lingered, fragile but full of meaning. Later that night, alone in her small bedroom, Amara replayed his words. Real. No one had ever called her that before. She'd always been the girl behind the counter, the girl holding everything together, the invisible one. But when Kael looked at her, it was as if she wasn't invisible at all. She buried her face in her pillow, furious with herself. She couldn't afford to feel anything for him, not when he came from a world designed to chew her up and spit her out. And yet, her heart refused to listen. Across town, Kael lay awake in his penthouse, staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed with new headlines, new photos of him and Amara walking hand in hand at the event, but all he could think about was her voice telling him about waiting on the porch for a father who never returned. He knew that feeling too well. For the first time, he didn't feel so alone. Do you think two people with such similar wounds are more likely to heal each other or hurt each other? Share your thoughts below.
The next few days blurred into a routine Amara could hardly believe she was living. Public appearances with Kael, scripted smiles for cameras, long car rides and sleek black SUVs. Every time she told herself it was temporary, just until the noise quieted down.
But between the staged photographs and the flashing lights, something unexpected began to happen. Kael stopped performing. On the third night, instead of rushing her to another event, he suggested a detour. "You've seen enough red carpets. Want to see where I go to breathe?" Amara raised an eyebrow. "You breathe somewhere?" He smirked. "Occasionally." They ended up at a neighborhood basketball court tucked behind a church. The paint on the lines had long since faded, the chain-link fence sagged in places, but the hoop still stood proud against the night sky. Kael dribbled a ball he'd pulled from his trunk, the sound echoing through the quiet. "This is where I used to play as a kid, before anyone cared, before the money." Amara leaned against the fence, watching him sink a shot with effortless grace. "You still look like you care." He caught the rebound, tossed it to her. "Your turn." She laughed, holding her hands up. "I don't play." Never too late. The ball was heavier than she expected. She squared her shoulders, took a breath, and threw. It missed the rim by a mile, bouncing awkwardly into the grass. Kael doubled over laughing, his voice free, unguarded. Amara tried to hide her grin, but failed. "Okay," she said, cheeks warming. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this." "Wrong," he teased, jogging to grab the ball. "You just need a better coach." For the next half hour, he showed her how to hold her hands, where to place her feet. Every time she missed, he encouraged her. Every time she got closer, his smile widened. Finally, when she managed to hit the rim, she threw her arms up in mocked victory. "See," he said, grinning, "natural talent." She rolled her eyes, more like natural embarrassment. But she was laughing, really laughing, and for the first time in weeks, the weight on her chest lifted. Later, they sat on the hood of his car, sharing a bag of fast food fries. Amara licked salt from her fingers, shaking her head. "All that money and you still eat this junk?" "Some things money can't ruin," he said with a shrug. "Fries are sacred." She chuckled, then fell quiet, staring up at the stars faintly visible above the city glow. "I can't remember the last time I did something like this. Just sat." Kael's voice softened. "You deserve more moments like this." Amara glanced at him, her chest tightening. She saw no arrogance in his eyes, no smugness, just sincerity. It scared her more than the cameras ever could. "You say that now, but what happens when this blows over, when the cameras move on?" Kael didn't look away. "Then I'll still be here, if you'll let me." The words hung between them, heavier than the ball she'd tried to throw earlier. Amara wanted to scoff, to remind him he wasn't a fairy tale for him to toy with, but instead she said nothing. Her silence wasn't rejection. It was a quiet acknowledgement of the possibility that terrified her most. When Kael dropped her off at her apartment, Jeremiah was waiting at the window. His little brother instincts had been buzzing since the story first broke, and he wasn't shy about it. The moment Amara stepped inside, Jeremiah folded his arms. "So you and Donovan are a thing now." Amara groaned. "No, Jeremiah, it's complicated." "Complicated looks like a smile you don't usually have." She froze. "What smile?" "The one you just walked in with." Her cheeks warmed, but she brushed past him. "Eat your dinner, smarty." Jeremiah grinned knowingly, but he didn't press. In his penthouse, Kael lay on the couch again, staring at the ceiling, but this time it wasn't loneliness gnawing at him. It was the sound of her laughter echoing in his ears, the sight of her grinning when the ball finally touched the rim. For once, his world felt less empty, and it had nothing to do with trophies or headlines. The morning after their night at the court, Amara arrived at Mel's diner to find a stack of tabloids scattered across the counter. Denise tried to sweep them away, but Amara caught enough of the headlines to feel her stomach twist. Kael Donovan's secret deal. Waitress paid to play fiancé. Leaked contract reveals staged romance. Is the Cinderella story just a hoax? Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. There, in bold black print, were photographs of the contract she'd signed, her signature circled in red. Amara's vision blurred with fury. She stormed into the back room, ignoring Denise's voice calling after her. Her phone buzzed with dozens of messages, most accusing, some mocking, a few cruel enough to make her stomach lurch. By the time Kael showed up at the diner, she was ready to explode. He stepped inside, ignoring the stares of customers and the whispers that followed him. His eyes locked on Amara's, but instead of the warps of last night, he saw nothing but fire. "Amara," he started. She threw the tabloid at his chest. "You used me!" He caught it, stunned. "What? You said we were in this together. But all along it was just PR, a stunt, a way to clean up your image while mine gets dragged through the mud." Kael shook his head, his voice low, urgent. "No, I never leaked this. I never wanted it to be—" "Don't lie to me," she snapped. Her voice trembled, but her fury gave it strength. "Do you know what it's like to see your life splashed across headlines like you're some cheap story?" "Amara, listen." "No." Her fists clenched at her sides. "I let my guard down. I actually thought—" She stopped, biting back the words before they betrayed her too much. "I was stupid." Her words cut deeper than any headline. Kael's chest tightened. He wanted to explain, to swear that he had nothing to do with the leak, but the hurt in her eyes told him it didn't matter. She'd already decided what he was. "Amara, please," he said softly. "Last night, what we shared, it was real." She laughed bitterly. "Real? You don't even know what that word means. You live in a world where everything is bought, staged, or fake, and now I'm just another part of it." Her voice cracked then, a crack she quickly covered with a glare. "Stay away from me, Kael." He didn't chase her. He couldn't. Not when every step closer seemed to push her further away. Instead, he left the diner, his chest heavy, his hands shaking. Outside, reporters swarmed him, shouting questions, thrusting microphones in his face. "Kael, did you pay her to stay? Are the feelings real or fabricated? Is Amara just another PR stunt?" He shoved past them, his mind roaring louder than their voices. For the first time in years, the game, the fame, the money, it all felt like shackles. And he realized he might have lost the only person who'd ever seen him more than that. That night, Amara sat on the edge of her bed, Jeremiah hovering in the doorway. "You really think he leaked it?" her brother asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. Her throat was tight, her chest aching. "It doesn't matter. This is his world, and I don't belong in it." Jeremiah frowned. "But you liked him." Tears stung her eyes, but she forced them back. "Liking someone doesn't change who they are, or who I am." She lay back, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince herself she was right, that she was better off walking away now than waiting for him to hurt her again. But the echo of his voice, what we shared was real, wouldn't leave her. Across town, Kael sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights stretching endlessly below. His phone buzzed with calls from his agent, his teammates, sponsors demanding statements. He ignored them all. All he wanted was to hear Amara's laugh again. But tonight, all he had was silence.
Amara spent the next 2 days avoiding every headline, every whisper, every thought of him. She poured herself into extra shifts at Mel's, scrubbing counters until her hands were raw, pouring coffee for customers she barely saw. Anything was better than feeling the ache inside her chest. But when the diner closed late one night and she walked home through the quiet streets, her defenses began to crack. She passed the old corner store where she and Jeremiah used to wait for their father, the memory of hope sharper than the sting of abandonment. She'd told Kael about that moment, shared a piece of herself she'd never shared with anyone. And she remembered how he'd listened, not with pity, not with indifference, but with understanding. Her steps slowed. She hated that part of her still believed him, hated that a voice deep inside whispered maybe, just maybe, he hadn't betrayed her after all. Across the city, Kael sat on the balcony of his penthouse, the skyline glittering like it was mocking him. His phone lay face down on the table beside him. His agent had called 23 times. The team wanted him to release a statement. Sponsors were threatening to pull deals. But none of that mattered. All he could think about was the way Amara had looked at him in the diner. The disappointment, the anger, the heartbreak. He replayed every word, every laugh, every glance between them. The night at the court, the fries on the hood of his car, her laughter when she finally hit the rim. For once, he didn't want to run from the pain. He wanted to fight for her. But what if she never believed him? The question burned like acid in his chest. Amara lay awake in bed, Jeremiah asleep in the next room. She stared at the ceiling, the words she hadn't spoken at the diner echoing in her head. I actually thought what? That he could be different? That maybe, against all odds, she'd found someone who saw her? Her throat tightened. She had a choice: protect herself by walking away forever, or risk being shattered all over again by opening her heart. And she didn't know which terrified her more. Kael couldn't sleep. Around midnight, he rose, grabbed his jacket, and drove with no destination. The streets blurred past him, his thoughts louder than the hum of the engine. When he finally stopped, he found himself outside Mel's diner. The lights were off, chairs stacked on tables inside. He sat there in his car, staring at the darkened windows, as if her ghost lingered there, wiping down counters, pouring coffee for customers she barely saw. He gripped the steering wheel, his pulse racing. He wanted to knock on her door, tell her everything, beg her to believe him. But fear pinned him in place. Fear that she'd shut him out again, this time for good. Still, sitting there in the silence, he knew he couldn't let it end this way. The next morning, Amara stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window as Jeremiah wolfed down cereal. "He didn't sleep again," he said between bites. She forced a smile. "Neither did you." Jeremiah set down his spoon. "You're not mad at him." Her smile faltered. "Jeremiah, you're hurt, but you're not mad, not really. I can tell." She looked away, blinking hard. "Even if I'm not, it doesn't matter. His world isn't mine." "Maybe," Jeremiah said softly, "but maybe his world needs you." His words lodged in her chest like a splinter she couldn't ignore. Kael finally made his choice that same afternoon. He walked into his team's press conference, ignoring the flashing cameras, ignoring his agent's furious whispers. He stepped up to the microphone, his jaw tight, but his voice steady. "I didn't pay Amara Fields to be in my life. She didn't ask for any of this. If you're looking for a scandal, it's me you should blame, not her. She deserves peace, not this circus. And if protecting her means losing endorsements or fans, so be it." The room buzzed with murmurs, questions flying, but Kael stepped away without answering. For once, he didn't want to run from the pain. He wanted to fight for her. And perhaps she, too, was a hand to help him get there. And pray that she'd see that. That night, Amara scrolled through the clip of his speech on her phone, her hands trembling. She watched him take the blame, watched him shield her when he could have saved himself. Her chest ached, her defenses cracking. Maybe he was reckless, maybe he was flawed. But maybe, just maybe, he was also telling the truth. And now, it was her turn to choose.
Rain slicked the streets of Atlanta that night, the city alive with neon reflections and the steady hum of traffic. Amara stood beneath the awning of Mel's diner after closing, staring out into the wet darkness. Her phone buzzed in her pocket again, a notification from yet another news outlet replaying Kael's press conference. She hadn't been able to stop watching it. The way his voice shook slightly, the steel in his eyes when he said her name, not as a headline, not as a scandal, but as someone worth protecting. It was reckless, bold, infuriating, and it was real. Denise poked her head out from the kitchen. "You heading home, honey?" "In a bit," Amara said softly. Her heart pounded as she stepped out into the drizzle. For once, instead of heading straight home, she let her feet guide her. They carried her down familiar blocks, past corner stores and lamp posts, until she found herself at the neighborhood basketball court. The same one he'd brought her to, where laughter had replaced fear, where trust had flickered like a fragile flame. She stopped at the fence, gripping the cold metal links. And then she saw him. Kael stood at the free throw line, hood up, the ball bouncing rhythmically against the cracked asphalt. He didn't see her at first. He just shot, caught, and shot again, each movement steady, almost prayerful. When the ball finally clanged off the rim and rolled toward her, she stepped forward, picked it up, and held it in her hands. His head snapped up. Their eyes met through the drizzle. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain tapping against the court. Amara's voice broke the silence. "You always come here when you're lost?" Kael pulled down his hood, rain slicking his hair to his forehead. His chest rose and fell with the weight of unspoken words. "I come here when I need to remember who I am." She held the ball against her hip, her fingers trembling. "And who's that, Kael? The millionaire? The scandal? Or the man that turned my life upside down?" He took a step closer, his eyes steady. "I'm the man who said I'd marry the next woman that walked through that door. And for the first time in my life, I meant every word." Her breath caught. She wanted to fight the pull, to remind herself of every reason this was impossible. But the sincerity in his voice cut through her fear. "You hurt me." "I know." His voice cracked. "And I'll spend as long as it takes proving I never wanted to, that I never will again." The ball slipped from her fingers, bouncing once before rolling away. Kael reached for her hands, hesitating until she let him take them. His palms were warm despite the rain, his grip steady, though his voice trembled. "I don't need cameras. I don't need contracts. I just need you, Amara. Not the waitress, not the headline. You." Tears blurred her vision. For so long she'd carried the weight of abandonment, of being unseen, unheard. And here he was, flawed, reckless, but real, standing in the rain asking her to believe in him. Slowly, painfully, her defenses cracked. "Don't make me regret this." Kael's smile was small, almost reverent. "Never." He pulled her into his arms, the rain soaking them both, washing away the bitterness and fear. For once, Amara let herself lean into him, let herself believe that maybe love could find her after all. A week later, Mel's diner was buzzing again, not with whispers, but with warmth. Jeremiah sat in a corner booth, grinning ear to ear as Kael slid in beside him, joking about basketball stats and schoolwork. Denise bustled about trying to hide her smile as she refilled their cups. Amara wiped down the counter, glancing at the booth where Kael and Jeremiah laughed together. Her chest swelled with something she hadn't felt in years – hope. When Kael caught her eye, he lifted his glass in a silent toast. She rolled her eyes, but her lips curved into a smile she couldn't fight. For once, the noise around her didn't feel heavy. It felt like home. Later that night, as they walked home under the streetlights, Kael reached for her hand. "You know," he said teasingly but tenderly, "you still owe me a rematch at the court. 1 basket. Just 1. She laughed, shaking her head. "Don't push your luck, Donovan." But she squeezed his hand tighter, her heart finally light. If you were Amara, would you have trusted Kael after everything, or walked away for good? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear how you'd choose.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you loved this story, you will definitely love the next one. It's more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So go ahead and watch it now. Click on the image on your screen right away to watch the next one. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It helps and encourages us to share the best human interest stories you'd love.